This is a time and place set for public hearing and second reading of ordinance 1252 to consider the city initiated Simi Valley Municipal Code text amendment to prohibit medical marijuana cultivation, processing, distribution, and delivery within the city, Z-S-726, and a determination that the action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. May I have a reading of the ordinance?
6A, second reading, ordinance number 1252. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley approving city-initiated Simi Valley Municipal Code text amendment to modify Title IX to prohibit medical marijuana cultivation, processing, distribution, and delivery within the city, Z-S-726, and a determination that the action is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
May we have an oral report on this matter by staff?
Mr. Mayor and City Council, Peter Lyons is here for a report.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Before I start the staff presentation, I would like to mention that the city did receive correspondence regarding this subject amendment, and a supplemental memorandum has been provided to the City Council. At the public hearing on January 11th, the City Council introduced Ordinance 1252 to amend the Simi Valley Municipal Code to, again, prohibit medical marijuana land uses within all zoning districts within the city. And again, as you can see there, except as permitted for qualified patients and their primary caregivers per the California Compassionate Use Act. And we spell it out that we would prohibit all the other kind of uses, the processing, distribution, cultivation, delivery, and dispensaries. This ordinance would, again, allow for the cultivation of marijuana plants by qualified patients and their primary caregivers for what we're calling personal medical use or patient medical use at the home of the patient. However, and that this ordinance in its second reading, if you wanted to act on it this evening, you would have to approve it in that form. If tonight the council wishes to instead prohibit qualified patients cultivating medical marijuana at their home, the alternative would necessitate the council to give city staff direction to amend the ordinance, and we'd bring it back at a subsequent council meeting under an urgency ordinance. And again, that urgency ordinance would have to be approved on a 4/5 vote. So we do have that option, but because of the March 1st deadline, we would have to bring it back on February 22nd, and it would be considered for approval under a 4/5 vote. This concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff?
Yes. Why was this written in such a way, and run the flag up if you think I'm saying this incorrectly, but I read this that says that if I want to vote yes, prohibit from growers in the commercial area, then I'm automatically having to vote at the very same time, yes, that you could grow home cultivation for those that have they call it a prescription, which is incorrect. It's a recommendation that they smoke cannabis or marijuana, whatever they want to call it. So I feel this is a very poorly written. If it should be two choices. One, do we want to allow it in our commercial areas? That's one vote. Two, do we want to allow it for residential home growers? And I don't mean to.
Well, we were asked, the city manager many months ago directed us to, because of this ordinance that became, this state legislation that became effective on January 1, to bring an ordinance to the commission and then to the council that would prohibit the commercial portion of this. We did research and found out that we couldn't prohibit personal use with a prescription by a physician. However, court cases would allow us to prohibit private patient cultivation at home. So again, we are bringing you an ordinance that, if approved, would prohibit it. If you don't take an action, then what happens invariably is that come March 1st, the state would regulate commercial uses.
I have a question.
Is that your question, or?
I think the Planning Commission did amend it, and what's before them is to allow for the personal cultivation.
Correct. And so then we took the ordinance that would prohibit literally all cultivation in any form to the commission, and after lengthy discussion, they recommended this, what's in red, this exception, and it's stated here as permitted under strict accordance with the Compassionate Use Act there, but the commission's recommendation in a nutshell is to allow for personal patient cultivation at home. That was introduced 2 weeks ago. That was you introduced it, and that is why it's before
Okay,
you.
but am I reading it correctly? If I say no to one, I'm saying yes to the other?
No, they're two separate actions. You can say no to one, and then you can say no again by approving option number 2, which says no cultivation of any kind anywhere.
Yeah.
So they're two separate issues, Keith.
And I think what I understood it to be is that it's in accordance with the Compassionate Care Act from the state, and that's why that was, I guess, drafted the way it was in the staff report, along with the
Correct.
recommendation from the Planning
The
Commission.
Planning
Well, the Planning
Commission.
Commission, that was part of their recommendation.
Okay,
Correct, and they did add that.
Okay.
Gosh,
That was
Mark,
added by the
I hate to
Planning
be
Commission.
confused, but I am. And my confusion is what we're reading is what's before us is a second vote on the vote that will allow home cultivation.
That is correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
if we vote tonight for the second reading of the ordinance the way it's been written, you're right. It would go into effect, and people could cultivate their own marijuana on their own.
Okay, and that's what I should have said, as written, and, okay, so I am only half crazy. I've got it. Okay, I do have that part of it then.
Yeah, but the backup option is we vote no on that, then we reintroduce the ordinance under urgency, 4/5, and we could say no to the whole thing.
Okay, and I'll save my comments for later.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions of staff?
How many plants are permitted under home cultivation?
Go ahead, Tom.
Under home cultivation, it's 6 mature and 12 immature plants. It's a either or, one or the other.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, I have some cards on this. Take them in the order they were given to me. The ground rules here, this is a public hearing. You have 5 minutes per card. I have 4 cards. First one, I don't have a first name on the first one. Maybe the first name. Vega, V-E-G-A.
Hello, council members. My name is Vega. I am born and raised in Ventura County, and I'm a current Simi Valley resident. This is my first city council meeting, and it looks like it was a hot topic night. And I thought this would be the hot topic, but definitely the detox center. I am standing here as an unlikely advocate pro-cannabis. I, like many of the people probably in this room or in our communities, have been touched very closely with cancer. I was the caregiver for my dad as he battled for lung cancer, and I wish I had access to responsible medicine for him that would help with him as he battled very traditional methods of battling with cancer, such as chemo and radiation. I have been networking and organizing with groups such as the Ventura County Cannabis Alliance, which is trying to advocate for patient rights. So I do urge the council members to at least at this point allow patients for personal grow at home. It is a tough issue in just terms of determining what you mean by cultivation versus homegrown, small small grows, or large commercial grows. There's a very big difference of the populations you're talking about. So to allow patients to at least grow their own medicine, because a lot can't go out and get their medicine or can't afford dispensaries or delivery services, or if it's not allowed in the area. And as in general, as speaking up and coming out, more and more people are taking the risk to do so because we see this as medicine and as an issue that we will be grappling with city by city statewide with all the ordinances going on, and just here to voice my personal experience, a voice from the community, and also on behalf of organizations that are organizing now to reach out with council, city members, or law enforcement to work collectively as a community. It's a large issue, and there's no area it doesn't touch, right? Even with the detox center or the seniors, senior care is a huge chunk of what cannabis medicine has been, used for with the different populations that receive care. So just wanted to voice an opinion, put a face to someone who's been touched by this, and someone who really advocates taking very responsible regulations, working with doctors and their recommendations, and making sure it's true patients who need this medicine and that they have access to it. Because if we all prohibit everything, then there's real patients out there that really need this medicine that will suffer either towards the end of their life care, or it could potentially save their lives if other options are not available. So I thank you for your time. It's nice to be here, and I hope to get to know more folks in the city I live in and I love living in, as we work with this issue moving forward. So thank you.
Pat Montoya.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name's Pat Montoya. I'm with the group Not One More, as we all know. I'm president of that group. I wanted to speak a little bit on this issue that we're seeing with this and the growing. I have no problem with the medicine part of it and taking patients that really need this. But what I see in the world that I get to live in is the abuse of this. And I get to see, I've put it on our social network that throughout all of our chapters across this country, which I have 9 from New York to Seattle, and including Colorado. And the parents that got a hold of me said that's the way their kids first got it going on this was the gateway drug of marijuana. I'm not here to say, let's not give it to the patients that we have. What I'm here to say is how are we going to regulate this so that it doesn't get into the hands of the youth out there and that, we don't have that problem. We've done great steps here in Simi to try to eradicate or try to work with the problem of drug addiction out here and the drug problems we have, and I think we made great strides here. We have to keep on moving forward with that. We have to keep on moving in a way that would regulate it, such as we do with the prescription drugs, the task force, the Ventura County Task Force, and how they work with the prescription drugs and how it is. Because right now, it seems like it's pretty easy to get a card out there. And where I work at, last Friday I was on Woolsey Canyon, and a lot of the cars I see come from Simi Valley and stuff, and there's hundreds of medical marijuana prescription containers on the side of the road at this turnout out there. And that was the first time I seen that, and I'm just going, these aren't the patients that are using this stuff. And that really got to me because, I know we can't help that who uses it or whatever, but I'd like to see more regulation on it, and yes, get it to the right people that need it, but not to the people that don't need it. An 18-year-old kid that's running around out there doesn't need it. And I agree with this woman here, a patient who needs it should have it and made available. As far as growing it here in Simi Valley, I think we're asking for a problem with that. The smell of it, for one, will attract people to come in and try to find it and take it. And that's going to be an unfortunate part of somebody elderly is growing it or something like that, and it's going to be taken from them. I think it'll be raise a little bit in the crime area, and we're going to see that happen out here. So I hope to see that there's a better regulation and there's more oversight on it if it does get passed. I know it's probably a futile attempt to try to say don't pass it and don't do it, but once again, Simi Valley has been a spear tip and doing wonderful things out here in our community. I think we can move forward and make some good regulations, make the smart moves out there, and make it available to the people who do need it. and keep it out of the hands, so they don't come to me, and I'm worried about them. You know, where I'm working from, you know, it's a sad world I deal with, and the mothers and the parents and the families that have lost those kids due to the start of where their kids started at 13 years old, picking up their first joint, and then moving into prescription drugs and heroin and death. That's my end, and that's where I get to see, and it's unfortunate. So thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Appreciate the hard work Not One More organization provides for our community. Jean Quinton.
Good evening, council members, or city council members, yes. I'm here as a caregiver for my son, who's 32 years old and was diagnosed with metastatic melanoma in July. He's had brain surgery and radiation, and he's had conventional IV therapy, and 3 months later he had to have radiation again because the brain tumors came back. So, and we haven't seen much other results with the IV therapy yet. And because he has metastatic, it's in his lymph nodes throughout his body and in his bones. And so about 2 months ago, he went to the doctor and got a prescription, and he has gotten onto cannabis therapy. It's an oil that he takes. He's not smoking it, and he's not growing plants. He's getting it delivered, and that is what I'm here for. I'm not sure why delivery is being excluded. They come in plain trucks, or they come by FedEx, some of his deliveries. It's a specially formulated oil that he takes for treatment. At this point, he's still being treated. He's not just doing it for pain. So that is where I'm coming from. I'm not sure that this initiative, even if they allow the growing of plants, is going to allow the delivery. He can't drive. It would be an inconvenience to go and get it for him. We have 2 or 3 appointments with doctors, getting therapy or getting diagnostics each week, and I work full time. So to have to decide, okay, I've got to go to the dispensary in I don't know where and get it for him. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't even feel like going out of the house, but he has to go for his appointments. So this is, I'm not sure. Does this address the delivery if you vote yes for the growing of the plants?
Yeah, it does.
If you vote tonight, this would allow for her son to grow it, but no one could be able to deliver it to her house. She, as a primary caregiver, could go to a dispensary outside the city where they are allowed and buy it and bring it back for your son. But you could not call a business to have them deliver it to your house if this is approved tonight as presented.
Okay, so it's a pretty big inconvenience. Just not speaking for my son, I don't know any other patients, but there's probably some who don't have a caregiver who could go get it for them. Delivery is about the only way they're going to get it, since we don't have dispensaries in the city or anywhere near. I guess the valley is still allowing the dispensaries, and it's a specific kinds, so it's not like I can go to any place and get it. We'd have to go and do more research, and we went through all that. And we won't know if it's working. I can't say that it's working because that can take 3 months to show results too, and we've only been through it 2 months, but we'd like to have the chance to see if that's going to work. He's still in conventional therapy. He's doing this in addition, and we just don't know where it's going to go. If you have known someone who's gotten chemotherapy or radiation, you know that it ravages the body. The cannabis does not. It's very safe. It doesn't interact with the other drugs he's taking. So that's my plea tonight, that it looks like it's coming down to the wire, so it would have to be something that you postponed and voted on later, but I had to come and say my piece today. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm here to support the prohibition of medical marijuana cultivation, processing, distribution, and delivery within the city, and prohibiting the personal grow as well. And I have reasons for that. Now, I understand the medical applications of this. There are legitimate resources for the medical application. The problem is the wording is in guidelines with the Compassionate Care Act. Nothing about the Compassionate Care Act has been followed to the letter of the law from the beginning. It's been abused, misused. They don't follow any of the wording. I see the same thing happening if you pass a law that allows for personal growth. And the concern I have about that is, well, if you're considering trying it, if you pass this, I don't see how you ever bring it back. And I feel really strongly about that. So I wanted to share that with you guys, and I hope you see my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Nogley? Noggle? All right, thank you.
Yeah, good evening. I'm one of the people that have a prescription, and I wanted to give you a perspective from my end. I pretty much kept a low profile. This might be dangerous. A few years ago, my neighbor called the police department on me because he saw I was growing it. And at first I was very mad at him. But actually I was kind of glad he did it. It gave me contact within the police department, somebody I could talk to and ask whether if I'm doing things correctly. They've been out to the house. I've talked to him at least 3 times to make sure I do it right. And I'm just asking you, don't take that away from me. I've grown my own vegetables for 20 years in my backyard. At a suggestion of a friend of mine, I bought a book kind of like the Growing Marijuana for Dummies. I bought it at Spencer's. And it's very basic, and I've been experimenting around for 3 years. Do I know what I'm doing? No. But I don't want to pay the ridiculous prices they're charging. I can grow what I need without any problem. And I have somebody to talk to make sure I do it right. And your police department liked what I was doing because nothing leaves the property. It's all composted. If my neighbors only knew what they saw spread around in my garden. But I just ask you, don't take it away from me. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further cards. Anyone else wishing to be heard on this item? Did you fill out a card?
I did not.
Okay. Fill out a card, please. You can do it after you speak, ma'am. Just state your name for the record to start out.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name's Ann Alfred. I'm one of your neighbors. I've been here in Simi Valley for 20 years now. Volunteer my time. I have a daughter that suffers from seizures. She's not older or senior, as a lot of these other speakers have said. She's 15. She has her whole life ahead of her. She suffered for this for the last 3 years, and she's on her 5th medication, and nothing's worked so far. I hope never to have to use medical marijuana. I understand the addiction properties of it. I've never had anything more than an Advil or double espresso myself, and completely against recreational drug abuse. But I plead with you, if this ever has to come up, that you consider not prohibiting delivery. I have no interest in growing this. I can't keep a rock alive. But please do consider, there are people out there, there are citizens out there that may need this in the future. Again, I hope never to have to deal with this in reality, but this is very personal to me. So I hope you think about it and really rewrite this if this is needed. And this is very important to my family, and I hope you do reconsider the aspects of this. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would fill that card out, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. I have no further cards. Anyone else wishing to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Now we'll go to council member comments. Start with council member Judge.
Okay. I was just informed by the city attorney that currently right now under the California Compassionate Care Act, it is legal to grow your own plants in the city of Simi Valley. Am I correct in that?
Yes, Mr. Council Member.
So if anything was to change in that matter, was changing the way people are allowed to do that for personal use, we'd be instantly creating criminals overnight. Is that true?
Well, if you make it illegal, then it won't be legal anymore. That's true.
Okay. Now, right now, maybe the police chief can help me with this question. It's not really a question; it's more of a statement. But I know the answer, but I just want to make sure that somebody can verify it on the dais for me. If you grow your own marijuana for the medication part of it under the California Compassionate Care Act, and you sell that to anybody that does not have a prescription, isn't that illegal?
Yes, it
Well, we
is.
need that on the mic, if you would, please. We have a record.
Sales of marijuana is still illegal in California.
So if somebody was to grow their own for personal use and sell it, they'd be committing the same crime as any other dealer, right?
They would most likely be arrested for that charge, yes, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to point those facts out because they're already currently there. These laws, the Compassionate Care Act, I am fully on board with banning the distribution, the stores, all that kind of stuff. But to step one more and just say we can't let people that are under the state law, which passed, by the way, by 65% of the vote, to say that they can't grow this for their own personal use, I think that's a little bit overreach. That's it.
Councilmember Soika?
Chief, I'm going to need you again. Okay, and you know, I can go either way on this, to be honest with you, because I think about, you know, some of the speakers, and I agree with them that, okay, if we do this, we're sending a message that, you know, and that creates a problem. People are going to abuse that problem, or that message, I should say. And that's the question I have to you is, currently right now, it's legal to grow your own if you have, what do you call it, not a prescription, but a recommendation.
Yeah.
Is that true?
That's my understanding.
You said yes. Have we had any problems with, you know, increased crime or people stealing plants out of people's backyards or finding people that are selling it? I mean,
That does occur, yes. You know, I don't know if there's an increase or not because it's always been that way, but that does occur. We do have crimes occasionally related to that, or complaints or calls for service.
and can you tell me or give me I guess you wouldn't have the exact numbers. I'm just trying to, so of your opinion though, if we were to pass this law and keep it status quo, would it stay the same or would it increase, do you think? Because it would heighten the awareness that you could grow?
There are 10 independent cities in Ventura County, is my understanding. Only one other city is considering making it legal to grow your own in that city. So I would imagine that ours, if we were the second, would cause an increase because there'd only be 2 cities in Ventura County that
I thought
allowed that.
Ventura and Moorpark also.
Moorpark is the one city that is doing that.
Ventura,
To my understanding, none of the other cities are allowing that at this point.
Even Ojai banned it.
Okay. All right, so that,
So
that
that's
helps.
speculation, obviously, but
Yeah,
that's
but thank you,
likely
'cause
conclusion.
Part of it, you know, I guess to send the right message, we would say no. But you know, being a realist, I truly believe in November this is going to be moot because it's going to be legal. But you know, we can't base our decision today on what we might anticipate happening in November. I get that. So I don't know. I'm still on the fence on this, and I guess I'm going to listen to my colleagues on what their opinions are, because I know that a few of them do have strong opinions on it. Mike, I appreciate your opinion, especially coming as a police officer. And thank you, Chief. Those are my questions. Yeah, I don't want to make criminals out of people that are allowed to do it today. I don't want to send the message that it's okay, though, and that it exacerbates a use or abuse, I should say, from kids. I think the bigger concern I have is allowing the ability to have delivery for the people that need it. Because in a sense, I guess that would be somewhat regulated. They're not going to, or would that, is that legal today to have it delivered to you under the compassionate care?
Not within the city, no, we don't allow for
But
delivery.
within the state?
All we currently allow for is under the Compassionate Use Act, which is the actual to have it in possession, and we've never addressed private cultivation, but to have it in possession. We've never allowed distribution, dispensaries, et cetera, but what we've done here is we're clarifying even more through this ordinance that you expressively cannot have those things. So today, you cannot call someone legally and have them deliver it to you.
Because, yeah, I hear the testimony, and it makes sense to have that ability, but I'm under the impression that it would come under some regulated business and not through some, black market, and I don't know, because I'm not involved in that. I don't know how it happens today.
The problem with deliveries is that there's no real way for them to be discreet. I mean, they can come in a plain car, they can come in whatever. The danger with that is, though, if they're carrying weight, if they're carrying money, they're a target, plain and simple. It puts people at risk. Whereas, if they're allowed to grow their own, well, then they can do that on their kitchen. They can do it in a closet. They can do it you can buy kits. I've seen them I've seen them all the ones we've confiscated. You can buy all kinds of kits that allow you to grow it in your home.
Yeah, see,
yes,
I'm
people
under
do
the
abuse
impression of not the actual marijuana itself, but of the oils, that you would use for medicinal.
Yeah, that one you'd have to go get.
Okay.
Unless you're really good at making it out of the plants you grow. I mean.
All right. Well, I haven't done anything to help my decision, so I'm undecided at this point. I'm just going to let my colleagues speak.
Let me jump in on the delivery part. I talked today with the mayor of Moore Park, Janice Parvin. Their ordinance came up specifically on the delivery, and they prohibited the delivery in their ordinance. And I asked her why, and she said because our police chief said that the problem with that is that a lot of them are bogus, okay, and it's a problem, okay. So and I'm paraphrasing, but that's what she told me. Chief, do you want to address that from a law enforcement standpoint? I know I got it secondhand through their police chief, but I thought you might want to address it.
I would concur with that. I think that's the problem. There was a nixle that went out last week or the week before where we arrested a delivery service person, and in addition to his marijuana, he also had meth and a gun and a bunch of other things. It's obviously a lot more efficient to deliver all your drugs than just one. So from us, unfortunately, we see that it's not like a UPS business or whatever. It's whoever wants to do that kind of stuff. So,
is there any reason that FedEx, maybe the folks here, FedEx, can they deliver it? I mean, can't the dispensaries put it in a FedEx box and send it FedEx or whomever, U.S. Mail?
My son said that it came FedEx. Some of this product came FedEx.
She said that it came FedEx. I imagine that I know there is some medicinal marijuana that is distributed like in capsule form that you go to. I think you can get at a pharmacy or whatever. So I would imagine that there are some versions that are legal to do that.
And then ultimately, just to wrap up my comments, thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Ultimately, it should be dispersed from a pharmacy. I agree with my colleagues that have brought that up. I mean, just like any other narcotic or drug or, a painkiller, then you can regulate it. And I would hope that that's where we would go if this does become legal. So I don't know. I don't know how Colorado's doing it. I don't know how Washington's doing it. I haven't researched it. So anyways. Those are my comments.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I voted, or I guess, I was fine with the introduction of the ordinance the last time around, and since then I've done a lot more research on this issue. And, where it's correct that it would be, legal in California, it's still illegal against federal law. And I think it was you, Mr. Mayor, that brought up tonight the preemption, of federal law versus state law versus local law. And even though our federal government has chosen to ignore this issue, it's still illegal. They haven't changed the laws. And so it's still, an illegal drug to have, to possess, to sell, and to smoke and to use in this state, even though it's not, even though the Compassionate Care Act is out there. I guess I have a lot of concerns on this issue because, and Mr. Montoya brought that up. What happens if somebody finds out that you've got pot plants you're growing, and and then somebody goes and steals them? Are you putting people at risk that way? I have issues with people smoking pot in an apartment, and there might be kids next door, and we talk about secondhand smoke and the big issue that everybody makes with all the secondhand smoke, but nobody talks about that with marijuana. What that might be doing, as it's seeping through walls and going over fences and into your neighbors, places where they're living and they're trying to raise their families. This issue is a tough issue because I don't know who said it, but none of this stuff has been done according to the laws. I mean, you go down Venice Beach, it's almost a joke when you walk down or ride your bike down Venice Beach, because every other business is a come and get your medical marijuana card. I mean, they're in your face, they look at you, and the guy might look at me and say, hey, God, you got all that gray hair coming up here, you got to have a card, and so you relieve your stress because something's causing that. It's goofy. Though when you're really in pain and when you're really sick, you go to your doctor writes you a legitimate prescription, not a recommendation. You go to a legitimate pharmacist where the products that you're getting are regulated by the FDA, for strength, consistency, for potency, for all those things, for safety. And, you get them, delivered, you get them given to you, through the pharmacy, and that the quality is there, the measurements are there, everything's there to make sure that what you're getting is a safe product. And this has none of that, and and I have concerns about all that stuff. It's real. I mean, the potency that you're getting, versus I mean, when you go to a medical marijuana, you can pick all sorts of different kinds of marijuanas and flavors and or whatever they call it, and it's just not run like a legitimate business, and from the research that I've done, all the medical benefits that you can get out of smoking marijuana, you can get by other ways, either through pill form or through the oils or however you can get it, but it doesn't have to be smoked to get the benefits of it. So I'm gonna, I know we've got more comments to be made, but I would like to move, and we can still continue with our comments. Number 2, to direct staff to amend the proposed ordinance to prohibit all medical marijuana plant cultivation, including cultivation of marijuana plants by qualified patients for their personal medical use, which will require the urgency ordinance to be considered on the February 22nd council meeting. One of our most dear friends' wife suffered and was a user of medical marijuana. And so I don't want to deny people their right to get it. So you can get it over in the San Fernando Valley, and it can be had in other places of the state. I just think we're sending a very bad message here in Simi Valley with all the stuff, the work that not one more has done. We've heard it over and over again how this stuff starts, and I'm not voting to support that.
All right, let me, thank you.
Do we need a second, or are we going to go out of order, or what?
Well,
It does need a second.
I want to look, give me the page.
That was page number 6, Bob.
Okay.
And that wasn't a motion. I was making the form of a motion, but the way it's written, it's not really a motion. It just says direct staff, but that's what I'm doing.
I'll make it in the form of a second if we can pull that off, and then I'll make my comments.
So I just want to make sure on the motion. Okay, so there's a motion and a second, which amends what we did before to basically say no cultivation, okay? In the prior one, in other words, we're amending the prior one. What is it? Is it silent on the delivery?
Well, in short, what the problem is, we need an ordinance in effect prior to March 1st. So we have one here that can get you there, because if approved tonight in its current form, you can second read it, and it'll be effective February 25th, 21st, whatever today is. However, if the council tonight wants to direct us to bring back an ordinance that prohibits everything here, in addition, it prohibits patients' cultivation in their home, we can do that. But we do need a vote. So it's a clear, because we need a vote to say a first and second to, if you look at the script here on page 8 at the very bottom, is not a ordinance 1252. Requires a motion and a second and a vote, and direct staff to return on February 22nd with a urgency ordinance to prohibit private cultivation also. So it was one vote. You can direct us to do that.
Yeah, but the question was, without going back and rereading it, what does this do as far as allowing or disallowing delivery in the community?
Both will prohibit delivery.
All right, that's what I-
Both prohibit delivery.
Yeah, and that's a good question. We're not doing anything to prohibit delivery. It's already prohibited.
It's already prohibited, but the state legislation is allowing us to sort of clarify that issue. Right now, it's somewhat murky on if you can or cannot, and so the state legislature adopted this legislation that became effective January 1 of this month, and pretty much gave cities a short timeline. We know there's some discussion of extending that timeline, but we more or less have to get clarity and either allow for forms of delivery or not. What I'm asking for here is an ordinance that would prohibit any form of delivery, as well as all the cultivation, etc. If the council wants to also prohibit private patient cultivation, I can bring that back to you on February 22nd. It'll be a 4/5 vote necessary to approve that. That becomes effective immediately on February 22nd, and we're set. So that's pretty much where we're going.
Okay, so is everybody clear with at least what we'd be voting on?
If I can clarify one thing, and also with staff, so if you have the red part of the ordinance, except as permitted, the new ordinance would not have that, and I guess it would be my recommendation that instead it say something like, including prohibiting personal cultivation, so it's clear.
That's
Because otherwise, if you just leave it as it is without the red, it leaves some room for interpretation. So if you want to actually ban the personal cultivation, you'd want to state.
But that's correct. And we would actually add
And that's what I read in there. Under number 2, it says direct staff to amend the proposed ordinance to prohibit all medical marijuana plant cultivation, including cultivation of medical marijuana plants by qualified patients for their personal medical use.
That's right, and
That's
it would.
correct.
And my recommendation would be it appears in the actual text, not just taking out the red, but some sort of clear affirmative prohibition at that date, if that's what you want to do.
And
it's clear. I want to make sure before actually we have more discussion.
Right.
But I haven't had a chance to speak yet. Okay, kind of jumped it a little bit, but that's okay.
Well, I just want to throw it out there, and we can finish all the discussion.
I just want to get sidetracked when people having a chance to make their position known. Okay. So if we add what the city attorney is suggesting, it's clear then that the actual delivery is prohibited in addition to what we just changed.
That's correct. And we would do an ad in the paper for an urgency ordinance to be considered at a public hearing on February 22nd.
Okay.
And just one reiteration that has been said many times, but you would need 4 votes on that date. And if you don't have them, then the risk is that if the state law doesn't move that March 1st date, then you would lose the ability
That's
to ban
correct.
even the commercial cultivation. So just so everyone's aware of that, because the deadline is supposed to be changed, we have heard from the state, but it is not yet changed.
But yeah, and I can update that. It's on the 3rd reading, coming back to the state Senate, I believe, tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, and so also we don't need a second on this, right? Because it has to go.
No, there's a motion and a second.
Well, but I think what Keith's asking, is this just an introduction of the new ordinance?
No.
If you look at the script there on page 8, I think we've had a first reading and a second reading, and it just allows a vote to clarify that what you introduced 2 weeks ago is denied. So you would make a first and a second to deny this, and direct us to hold a urgency ordinance hearing on the February 22nd council meeting that would prohibit cultivation as well as all the listed uses there. That way,
So really, I'm sorry. So really, all we have to do is vote no on this if that's the direction we're heading.
Yeah, and then
That's
direct
correct.
staff to bring
That's
back
correct.
the new ordinance, right?
Correct.
Okay,
And that
but-
would be a 4/5 vote that would take effect
Vote
immediately.
no on the motion?
No on the ordinance
Yeah,
that's
as a-
before us.
I should state as a formal matter, I don't think you have to vote on the second reading to vote no. You're not legally required. It's just nothing would happen with the
Right.
ordinance. And if they want to move to introduce the
Correct.
new ordinance, you could do that. So that's just legally, they don't have to vote no on this if they don't, if the council does not wish to, but you can do that as was described by the director. So just so you have that option.
Go ahead, Mayor Tim. We got sort of like sidetracked here,
Yes.
the motion in the middle of it.
Okay, first I'm going to do a disclaimer. And then at the end, I'll do a disclaimer, because I find that sometimes people forget what's said. The first thing is, I feel that anybody who needs, need is keyword, medical marijuana should be in whatever form they find that it's best for them. I want them to have that available to them. My concern is that if we endorse having home cultivation, that no different than the speed limit's 55, we all do 75. You're allowed to grow 6 plants, why not make it 10? 12 plants, there's already a provision for 12 plants, and pretty soon we can find ourselves in a situation where we have this wonderful side business going on in our town of everybody buying their, or growing their marijuana and selling it. That concerns me based on we're a community that is fighting so hard to rid the community of heroin and drugs, and I don't, experts, I've read a lot of stuff. Some people say it's a gateway, some people say it's not. But there's one thing that's pretty darn evident, that many, I'd say vast majority of our addicted drug users of heroin and such, at some point in their lives smoked marijuana. So there was some connection there. And to have it growing in multiple households throughout the valley to where people start learning each other's growing marijuana in their yards or in their homes, in their garages, in their attics. And then we have the problem of the children, if you will. I don't know what age, not going to pin it on any particular age. Or let's say we had a detox center and a couple of marijuana growers next to it. And they probably want to jump the fence or do whatever they can, break in the home and help themselves to that marijuana. So that's my concern, is what are we telling our children? What are we giving to our children? Yesterday, I brought up a Harvard report. It sounds pretty impressive. It's from Harvard. And it says, and I'm ashamed of myself, I had it piled at home and didn't bring it for everybody. But it says, a Harvard study says that marijuana use on a regular basis does affect the brain. They have proof of it now, and they said it is a small sampling, so they're going to do more studies, but they're shocked that the damage that it does and the difference in the brains of folks that have used it on a regular basis versus those that have not. And I can only imagine if they were studying the lungs, what that would be. So unfiltered, like go back to the unfiltered Camel cigarette days, I guess. So anyway, here's a kind of a liberal school that's suddenly finding that there's an issue. We can talk about Colorado. Colorado's brought in all this wonderful tax dollars, and there's nothing that a politician doesn't like more than to get tax dollars so they can spend it. And Colorado's doing a wonderful job through their recreational marijuana program of collecting tax dollars. But what they're not giving us are the figures of the cost of collecting those tax dollars, the cost of the damages to our youth, the brain damage that's occurring to them, the loss of motivation that's occurring to them, and the vehicle accidents that occur on a regular basis. What is that costing society? Police Chief, could I ask you a couple questions, please? So again, making it very clear, I'm not, that was the wrong wording, believe me. I'm not addressing those who need to use it for medical reasons, the folks with cancer and the folks in hospice, this type of thing. I question that not at all. Okay. But I question having this amount, the potential amount of marijuana grown and have it accessed by our kids. So I'm going to ask the police chief, what is a post?
What is a post?
Post in your world.
Oh, peace officer standards and training.
Okay, peace officer standards training. What is the standard, post standard, for hiring a police officer as it relates to marijuana use?
For the most part, it used to be zero tolerance for it. Now, as long as it's been in the past, it's okay, but you can't have it in your system once you're hired, for sure.
Right. And so this is my concern. We can have marijuana users. Are we going to allow this, make it legal, bless it, and then are we going to change the rules of post that says, yes, a police department can start hiring folks that are marijuana users?
No, we can't.
Right. And we also have now where we're running standards where truck drivers have to be tested. Many employers are tested. So there's obviously something here that this is doing something to the individual while they're under the influence that is not a positive happening. I don't want to provide this to our children. How many drug addicts have you arrested that never tried marijuana?
I honestly don't recall I couldn't give you a number, but I don't recall any that haven't tried, that if they've used other drugs, I don't recall when they've said, I don't use marijuana.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm just trying to illustrate that I grew up in the 60s. I grew up among many, many friends who smoked marijuana, and I've lost many friends that not to simply marijuana use, but they continued on, never got out of it, and went another direction and ended up losing their lives. I'm not willing to do that in Simi Valley. I'm not willing to step in the way of not one more who's fighting a great fight trying to prevent people from using heroin. And it astounds me that we're even discussing this. It's a great big no. It's a big no for all of it, in my opinion. And stop it. What are we thinking? And I'll go back to my disclaimer because I feel for you folks that need it, and I feel for your son. What we should be working on, say, no, absolutely not. We're not going to let our children be hurt. But what we're going to work on is if she needs special help getting to a dispensary somehow, some way to help her son that's suffering from cancer, a real legit illness, then I'm sure there's people in this room that will help you get that kind of service. I mean, this is a wonderful giving community. We have incredible amount of charities, and there's no reason in the world that someone wouldn't step up and say, hey, I go over there every day, I'll stop by and pick it up, something to that effect. So that's my disclaimer again. I don't want you to forget that I am not against people that need marijuana. I'm not against them having it. I am against an element coming into our city that is not what we're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. I join in the disclaimer, as he calls it. My heart reaches out for people that have a legitimate prescription for marijuana that helps them. And, you know, the ones, typically the ones that I think, at least my reading is, that help the people the most are the oils, not smoking the weed, okay? One of the things that I know is the industry, the marijuana industry in California is very robust. And there's mills all over the place. You can go into the valley, and there's doctors there that are writing prescriptions like crazy to people that are healthy as a horse. And we all know that, those of us that have done some study on this, okay? So for whatever it's worth, there's just a lot of loosey-goosey going on right now in that industry because there's a lot of money involved. And I moved out here in January 1969, and this has always been a family-oriented community. That's what we're known for. And to allow pot growing in every backyard willy-nilly, okay, is going to destroy that for our community. Absolutely destroy it. And this community has been very protective of family values. When organized gambling tried to come here in 1972 and they put it on the ballot, the citizens rejected that. And had we been a Gardena, Ronald Reagan Presidential Library would have not come to this town. But we stopped it as citizens. And the citizens in this town are not going to want to have pot growing in every backyard, okay? It's just the people, that's not where the people of this town are. And I'm out a lot, all the time. And I talk to a lot of people, and I've gotten a lot of calls since this has come forward in terms of people that are objecting and angry about it, okay? And I'm against the cultivation, strongly against the cultivation. And I wanted to talk with Mayor Parvin just to see why they voted against it. And the chief confirmed that's true here from our police chief as well, that there's abuses with the delivery services. And, you know, somebody's really got the dispensaries that do this are just over the hill. I mean, they're not like you got to go downtown L.A. or somewhere else, okay, to get the marijuana if you want to get it, if you have a legitimate prescription. I mean, you can get it. It's fairly close, okay? Some of this stuff is common knowledge. I happen to know a lot of it because I'm a former prosecutor and I've done a lot of criminal defense in my life. And so that's how I happen to know a lot of the stuff that goes on, having been in court on some of this stuff for people. And it's just not, it's a system that's gone amok, okay? And anybody that's in favor of cultivation in this town just doesn't know what's going on. And it's definitely a gateway. Marijuana is definitely a gateway drug. For 4 years or so, I was at the DEA when they came out here and did the presentation at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. And they had the top DEA guy from Washington, D.C. here, who's a licensed pharmacologist and a licensed attorney. And out of his mouth, this is a gateway drug. So when people come in and have their own opinion, whether it is or isn't, I'm going to listen to the top DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration official in the United States of America, on whether it is or is not a gateway drug. So I don't, and I'm on the Heroin Prevention Task Force Committee, and I've been at every single Not One More public meeting except for one. And the only reason I wasn't there, it was City Camarillo's 50th anniversary, and I had to go over there and congratulate them on behalf of City Council. And so I know how passionate the members of Not One More feel about this particular issue too. And I think we need to respect that. I don't want cultivation and I don't want delivery. And that's where I'm coming from. And there's ways that people can get their needs met, okay, that are lawful. And so I concur with Mayor Pro Tem Mashburn. You know, I do want people to, I am compassionate on this, and people that need it, they'll find a way. We always do, okay? And, you know, there's people in this community that have family members to get regular treatment. They find a way to make it happen. So somebody can come look me in the eye face to face and tell me that can't happen. I'll tell them it can. I'm living proof of that for my family. So this is not a good thing for the city of Simi Valley. It's not a good thing for our family values. And I think we should stand in the way of anything that encourages and proliferates the unlawful use of pot in our community, because it's going to lead to the other type of drugs that we've been so strongly fighting. And Dr. Phil singled us out years ago as the #1 leaders in the United States of America on this issue, top in the country. And we're going to sully that reputation by allowing people to grow pot in their backyard willy-nilly? Shame on us if we do that. That's how I feel, and I'm very passionate about it. And I invite citizens to contact me and tell me how they feel. And the street fair comes, part of my survey is going to be this, but I already know the result of it, because I'm going to have a booth at the street fair, and one of the questions on it is going to be this on the survey, and I already know where people are coming from. So I'm in favor of the motion that prohibits the cultivation and prohibits the dispensaries. I don't mean that. Dispensaries and the deliveries.
And residential cultivation.
Correct, well, I said the cultivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think what we're hearing is there's two types of cultivation. There's commercial and residential.
Well, yeah, all the cultivation.
Yeah.
All cultivation.
I meant that broadly when I said cultivation. I meant to include it all.
And maybe just to clarify, on page 6, then number 2, if it is...
Page what?
Page 6 of the staff report, number 2 there, which is about midway down the page, you can just, if it's the consensus of the council to direct me to schedule a urgency public hearing on the February 22nd council meeting, we will do that, which will prohibit any form of cultivation as well as all the delivery, distribution, etc. We'll go ahead and schedule that. It will require 4 out of the 5 council members to vote in favor of that urgency ordinance on the 22nd. So you can direct us.
I'd recommend a vote on that.
Oh, we're going to vote. There's a motion on the floor. I just want to make sure everybody got it. Okay. Call for the
Okay.
vote. It's not clear.
I want to be perfectly clear. The motion, from what I'm hearing, we're going to vote no on it.
You're going to vote to direct to bring it back
Okay,
with
that's a yes.
with those amendments.
Okay.
So is it clear?
It's a yes vote.
It's going to be a yes vote for those that are in favor of it. Obviously, if you're not in favor of it, you would vote no, to bring it back with those amendments. And it'll be an urgency ordinance at that time, which will... Yes.
Yes.
Any other questions? Call for the vote. Tally the vote, please.
Motion passes 4-1 with Councilmember Judge voting no.
All right, now